My name's Cliff. I am the Assistant Director for Career Development over at the Magna Career Center. I am specifically the business career coach, so I work with business majors. And like I said, today kicks off our first of many virtual career exploration series throughout the month of January. Mary's going to be working with me. She's going to be helping me out with the session, and she's one of our college assistants over at the Career Center. I do have everyone muted because the room's really large, but with that being said, if you have questions, things like that, please put it in the chat. Mary's going to help me out to make sure that we get everything addressed. Like I said, this is basically speed dating or speed networking, however you want to call it. So with that being said, if you do have things that don't get answered, we definitely encourage each of you to connect with the panelists later on, whether it be connecting with them on LinkedIn or other means that they ask you to connect with them, so you have a chance to really be able to chat with them. We're going to have 5 speakers throughout with about like 20-minute sessions each time. With that being said, I want to jump in. I have Kevin here, who is our first speaker, and I'm going to ask him a couple of questions, and then you all will have a chance to also ask some questions. So Kevin, can you hear me? Are you with us?
Yes, I'm with you guys. I can
Awesome.
hear you. Yeah.
So Kevin, let's jump in with, what are the factors that inspired you to select your current career?
All right, sounds good. Quick introduction. My name is Kevin Reyes, former Brooklyn College alum. I also used to work at the Magna Career Center, so shouts out to the Magna Career Center. I currently work as a rates trade and business manager in JP Morgan. And in terms of what factors inspired me to select my current career, I initially actually was going down the physical therapist path, which is funny to say. And I quickly found out that wasn't for me through taking those science courses. So I decided to look at something else, and I started to look at my own interest and like my own abilities and skills. And I was always a business oriented type of person. I was always interested in money and how money works, how you can make more money, keeping it blunt, right? So that was really like some of the things that inspired me. And then beyond that, I also was always a numbers guy, even from a young age. So with that, I started to think about what type of careers could potentially involve all of my different skills and all of my different interests. And through that, I landed in finance. So that's mainly how I wanted to like go about it and decided to go into the finance role.
Awesome. And what
Yeah.
is an example of a project that you frequently work on?
Yes. So recently when I joined, there's a certain service that we have. It's called Market Data Services. And basically as a business manager, we manage all of the different well, we ensure that the responsibilities that the traders have, that the processes are running as efficient as possible. So one of those responsibilities is managing their expenses, right? So these traders have access to many different services that they use for their trading. So for example, they might use Bloomberg or they might use Reuters or different indices that they need to perform their daily trading, right? So the situation is that sometimes when there's a new joiner, there will be a new joiner who joins in and they automatically get uh, a pre-selected group of services. Now, the situation is that these services might not all be necessitated for their responsibilities. So, if this new joiner joins into the team or joins into the desk, but they have different services or they have different responsibilities, then they don't really require all the different services they have access to. So then it's my responsibility to go in and check the different services they have available and try to remove those services to materialize any savings for the business. So that was the main objective, to try to materialize savings for the business by removing these unnecessary services that these traders have available to them. So through that, it's a pretty long process. I have to go around and talk to the desk heads or either talk to the traders individually and ask them if they really need the service or not. And it's a lot of back and forth regarding that. Sometimes the traders, they don't really know what this service does since they never used it. So I have to reach out to another team and get more info or more insight as to what this specific service does, and then go back to the traders and explain that to them. So it's very much back and forth. As a business manager, there is a lot of back and forth and a lot of chasing people around for different projects and different deliverables. So that's one of the projects that I mainly work on. We usually do that, say like quarterly, yeah, or whenever there's like a new joiner or a new contract negotiation. That's usually when we'll have to perform this analysis.
Awesome. My next question is a two-parter. So what do you enjoy most about your career and what is most challenging?
Yeah, so what I enjoy most about my career is the ability to be able to learn from the people around me. The people around me, you have to take into consideration, right? Some of these people have 10, 15 to 20 years of experience. So it's a great opportunity for you to start a conversation, ask them about how their career has progressed, have coffee chats with many different individuals, and they have so many different backgrounds. It's always so good to learn about how their career has progressed and the different accomplishments they have accomplished through their career. So that I enjoy a lot, like the networking opportunities. You meet so many interesting people. Actually, like my manager, he actually was a mechanical engineer before joining in JP Morgan. So you see things like that, that's just like so interesting to learn about different people. And I would say that would be like one of my favorite things about the career. And in terms of what's most challenging, one challenge that I found was that as an analyst, right, this business management role requires you to communicate in a sort of demanding and sort of assertive and confident way, but you have to also have to be respectful, right? Because as a business manager, you're you have to ask these different individuals for different deliverables, and you have to take into consideration they're very busy, they have a lot of different projects, and if you bring them if you propose to them a new project, they might be a bit hesitant to even try to work with you there. So for that reason, you have to be able to communicate in such a way where you're being respectful, but you're also being assertive and being confident as to what you want to get done. So that I would say, like being able to communicate in that such a manner that for some people that may be challenging. I would say that was challenging for me my first couple times because like talking to upper management is not as easy. Sometimes you might get nervous, sometimes you might trip up or whatever the situation is. But that's what I would say like might be challenging.
Excellent.
Yeah.
And can you describe the type of person that would be a good fit for this career?
Yeah, so a person that would be a good fit for this career would be a person that is good at multitasking. Many times you may be hit with like an ad hoc project that needs to be done like on the same day that upper management needs to review. So it's something that has very short deadlines. So you have to be able to manage different projects at the same time. You have another project ongoing, and then you need to complete this other project at the same time. So being able to manage many different initiatives is very important and very key. Also, and that also ties in with being a good time manager. So setting time aside for in the morning, I will get this completed, in the afternoon, this completed, and being very organized. So if you're a very organized type of person, you're good time manager, and you're good at multitasking, you'll probably do good in this career. And also, I would say being able to communicate effectively, going back to my previous point, being able to communicate effectively, being able to express your interest and express or ask any questions you may have at specific timings. That I would say, if you're able to do all of that, then this would be a good fit for you, this career. Yeah.
I was muted, sorry. Jody,
Yeah.
and I see your hand up. I'll get to you once I get through this last question. So, Kevin, before we open it up to the audience,
Yeah.
what do you know now that you wish you knew earlier?
So I would say like don't get so fixated on one career path. I find that many people they like say for example, oh, I want to do sales and trading and I want to do sales and trading. I want to do a sales and trading S&T and I want to. They get so fixated on just one specific career and they don't really like open their mind or open their perspectives to so many different other possibilities. There are so many different positions available that there's something that is even more interesting probably. And the situation is that many times once they are already in that position, they find out they're like, oh, this is actually not what I wanted. And they start having second guesses. And then that's when career switches happen. And, you know, it's not as best to do that. So what I would say is don't get so fixated on what you want to do. Keep your possibilities open, keep your perspective open, and just know that there's something out there for you. Finance is so big, there's so many different positions. So really look into deeply as to what you want to do. Try to assess your own skills, your own abilities, and then from there, try to look for positions that have similar responsibilities to what you want to do and the skills that you possess and your interests as well. That's what I would say. Yeah.
Great. So now we're going to move over to questions from the audience. We did get a couple in the chat. I'll have Jody Ann speak first, just because it's nice to hear someone else's voice, and then we'll jump into the chat.
Okay, thank you so much, Cliff. Hi, everyone. Hi, Kevin. I had two questions. The first question is, I saw that, like, I went on your LinkedIn, so I saw that you had initially interned at JP Morgan and then kind of moved into your role. And I wanted to know, just a little bit more about that, like how you were able to, do the internship and then move into the role. And then my second question is more so about the different types of software products you use, and if you can provide how someone else who is maybe unfamiliar with those tools, like how I could learn more.
Yeah, sounds good. So to answer your first question, in terms of the actual internship, most of these internships are within a program. So the specific program that I am in is GFBM, Global Finance and Business Management. And this is a 2-year rotational program. Some people call it 3 years if they add in their internship as well. But the main thing is that once you get your internship, and that's a big one, right? Once you get your internship, you basically it's up to you to perform your best during that internship and really excel in all the different areas for them to extend you a full-time offer. That's the main goal going into these internships, for them to extend you a full-time offer. And once you have, after the internship, then most likely if you're a junior, most likely you'll do your senior year of college and then you'll start your full role after you graduate. So that's how most programs work in finance. I know some of them may differ depending on what year you're on, but that's like the general layout for that. And in terms of getting that internship, that is like it takes a lot, to be honest. You need a lot of experience, I would say. Before I was able to land this internship, I did at least like 2 different externships and summits with other companies as well. And I even took an unpaid internship at one point as well with the government. I also did an internship at PwC. So I was really trying out and exploring the different opportunities, but also building that experience. And then once I applied to JP Morgan, they saw that, oh, I worked at PwC, I worked at HRA, I
Right.
had this summit, right? That's how they were like, okay, he has relevant experience. Let's bring him on to this internship. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, that's super helpful. I mean, yeah, that's like the right like roadmap to follow. So that's like super helpful. And then in terms of like the different software tools that you use on like your like daily basis, could you tell me more about that?
Yeah, for sure. So I am an analyst at the moment. More senior up people, they do use more complicated firm specific softwares, I would say. So there's like softwares like Athena, which is specific to the trading and give you trading prices, market pricing throughout the day, and more of softwares of that sort. In terms of what I use, mainly the most complicated software that I'll use will probably be either Alteryx or Tableau, but that is in very select cases though, so not as much. I wouldn't say I'm a advanced user of Tableau or Alteryx, but at least knowing the basics of those will put you ahead a lot. And of course, the Excel and PowerPoint. There's always that meme that goes around saying that investment bankers live on Excel all day, every day. So, there is some truth to that. Most of your projects are going to revolve from Excel, and then from Excel, you're either going to branch out to Alteryx or Tableau or PowerPoint, depending on what you want to do with the data that you analyze on Excel. But yeah, that's what I would say. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. That's helpful to know.
You're welcome.
Okay, so we have some questions in the chat as well. I'm gonna go through from the beginning, and then Kevin, you could just answer them.
Yeah.
So the first question is, was it difficult to make a switch from your major to your career now?
So I was a finance major. I initially when I was a freshman, I was interested in becoming a physical therapist or like either like a coach, like sports coach or something of that nature. However, I quickly learned like that's the good thing also about taking like many different classes your freshman and sophomore year. You get to learn what you like and you get to learn what you don't like. So I quickly learned I didn't like this, but I also like this. I like my business management class. I like my uh business ethics class, etc. So from there, that's when I'm like, okay, so I'm just major in finance and go from there. Yeah.
Great.
Perfect. Thank you.
I could do the next one, Mary. What factors or actions would likely increase the chances of securing employment in this type of company or industry? So what do you suggest?
Like as an advice as to once you're in the internship or as advice to just getting a position in general?
Let's start with getting a position in general.
In terms of getting a position in general, I would say having relevant experience, current relevant experience, and showing that you're taking the initiative to advance your own development. That is very important because many of these companies they want to see self-starters and they want to see individuals who are willing and able to invest in their own development. So they like these HR people, they really like when they see people that, oh, they've taken extracurricular courses. Like they've done things that are beyond the regular, go to college and then maybe have like a side job or something like that. They want to see that, oh, maybe they were involved in a what do you say, like a coding camp, or maybe they were involved in a sort of program with another company or something of that sort, or maybe they, or also another thing on a side note, going to many different events is very important as well. That is where you really meet a lot of other individuals who work at the company, and they could provide more insight as to how to possibly get inside the company as well. And many of these events are just good networking opportunities. So a combination of all those things like will increase your opportunities to join a company like JP Morgan.
Thanks, Kevin.
Yeah.
So we have another one here. It says, your role seems interesting. Can you expand on your day-to-day and what skills you need to be successful?
Yeah. So my day to day, I would say I start off every morning reviewing my emails and setting up a to-do list for the day. That is very important. Like I said, you have to be organized. Answering your second question, one of the skills is organization. You're going to work on a lot of different initiatives at the same time and being able to manage a lot of different communications from a lot of different people. Some of these people might be asking for different action items and you need to make sure that you're on top of that. And if there's any deadlines that you need to make sure that you're meeting these deadlines in a timely manner. So that goes into organization. In terms of my day to day, mainly it really depends. Sometimes I'll have meetings throughout the day regarding different projects that I'm working on. If not, I'll just work on my desk work, what I'll call it, which would be different projects that my manager assigns to me. So whether that would be an analysis project that I've been currently working on, or like the market data services, or actually recently we since we just closed the quarter as well, we're also working on the quarterly business reviews as well. So that's another pending project that usually you work on in like January, August, November time. Those are the times I usually work on these QBRs. So that's mainly how my day to day mostly looks like, but it's never the same. Like most people say, right? It's never the same. And yeah, in terms of skills, I would say advanced Microsoft Office skills are super important. Making sure that you're very comfortable with Excel, beyond comfortable, like knowing the ins and outs of Excel, pivot tables. I thought I was pretty good at pivot tables, but once I joined, I knew there was much more to learn. So really like dig deeply into these features that Excel has. PowerPoint, of course, you're gonna be presenting a lot. So just being comfortable with those type of skills is very important.
Great. And then, so we have like 2 minutes left, so probably time for like two more questions. So how would you describe the culture at JP Morgan, and does it differ in any way regarding previous roles you had?
Yeah, so the culture in JP Morgan, I would say, is some of the best that I've experienced. Everybody is so friendly and so open to helping you out. Granted, some individuals are busy, so you have to be good with your timing. but most of the people are happy to have coffee chats with you, discuss their careers, discuss their jobs and responsibilities. So it's a very open and communicative type of environment. And I really like that as well. Previously, actually, during my internship, I was in a asset and wealth management role. And what I noticed is that in that specific line of business, people are much more communicative and much more, would you say, like, I guess their personality is much more outgoing, I would say, as to they do speak with clients on a daily basis, even more than sales and traders. So there was a bit of shift like within line of businesses. The culture within each line of businesses is different, because now that I'm in CIB, corporate and investment banking, the traders and the salespeople, they're much more like focused and much more, say, like on their tasks. They may not be as open to talking or having coffee chats. So you have to take that into consideration. You have to really like be aware, have situational awareness to see like what are the practices, what are the norms around you, and you could go from there in terms of like the culture. Yeah.
Great. So that just about brings us at time. So Kevin, what's the best way for students to connect with you for those that didn't get their questions answered? Is it LinkedIn, something else?
Yes, you can add me on LinkedIn, Kevin Reyes. If you have like any other questions or any specific questions, you can reach out to my email as well, Kevin Reyes 1858 at gmail.com. And yeah, those are, you can reach me out through there.
Excellent. So
Yeah.
we'll put the LinkedIn in the chat. I just put the email in the chat.
Okay.
But Kevin, you're welcome to hang around, or if you have to hop off, we totally understand. But
Yeah,
thanks so much for taking the time. Like I said, 20 minutes goes fast. So
it
thanks
does.
all for getting those questions in, and make sure you connect with Kevin. I'll also add, if you're adding him on LinkedIn or if you're emailing him, let him know that you met him here today, because it's really hard when we get tons of emails and messages because we're not really entirely sure why people are reaching out, right? So make sure that you make that connection, and Kevin's going to be a lot more likely to accept that request, of course, as well.
Thank you, Cliff.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
So with that, we're going to move on to our next panelist. Daniel, are you with us?
I am. How are you?
Good. How are you today?
Doing very
And let's
well.
get him
Thank
up
you so
there.
much for having me. I appreciate it.
So we're super excited. I have a couple of questions that I'll ask, and then definitely questions from our students. Before I officially start the questions, I'd love to know what your current role is and title.
Yeah, sure thing. So what don't I do? But I have a couple of things that I focus on, but this is career. So I'll start off with I'm a senior manager over at FanDuel. So FanDuel is America's #1 sports technology company, and so really really excited. I live in Los Angeles, so it's a little bit it's earlier for me on my end, and really really excited to be back into the corporate landscape as of like about 8 months ago. But before then I was very entrepreneurial, and I lead Entrepreneurs of Tomorrow, which is a 501c3 nonprofit that focuses on teaching Black and Brown students and students of immigrant backgrounds how to solve problems through entrepreneurship. And then I'm also a business owner, and I run WFH Studio, which I have been doing for the past years before I got back into corporate. But the business is growing. I don't particularly want to do that work every day, but I'm really excited for that business to grow, and the leadership that's taking that on. So 3 things: FanDuel, Entrepreneurs of Tomorrow, and WFH Studio I own.
So, just like a couple of things, not really that much. Probably don't sleep, but just 3 things.
Oh no, I sleep a lot. That was one of my promises to myself. I slept enough last year, but I'm gonna even get more sleep. I'll be 40 in about a year and a half. So so I was like, I think your rest is very conducive to my development.
Awesome. All right. So let's jump in. What factors inspired you to select your current career?
Yeah, as a lot of people have probably, I fell into HR. So I started my career at Giorgio Armani. I wanted to be a buyer there, and the environment was not something that I saw myself long term, financially, in fashion in New York, except when you become like a huge buyer. And Target recruited me off of campus at Brooklyn College campus, and shout out to Natalia who helped me with that interview. And so Natalia is still around, I understand, and so I didn't want to work for Target. I was like, Target retail, like why would I want to do that? And I decided to do that when I saw the salary that they were offering and then the level of experience, and I understood exactly what how do you like what is the level of leadership that needs to run a retail store. So I started my career at Target, spent 7 years there, which was amazing. Started off from being an HR in the store all the way to leading a district, 8 stores, about $300 million worth of business for the company before I left over to Amazon. And then Amazon, I was a senior HR business partner, and I opened up a new site there around, I think it was around 7,000 people that we had to hire for that site. So mini company, but just Amazon, that Amazon site. And then after Amazon, I went ahead and explored entrepreneurial pursuits.
Great, thank you. And what is an example of a project that you frequently work on?
An example of a project that I frequently work on. So from an HR standpoint, we're really building out teams. So we do a lot of career mapping. So exactly what does a career need to look like for entry level person all the way through sort of matriculating and being promoted through their career. We do a lot of pay leveling, and there's a lot of math in HR, which is interesting, right? So, thinking about how do we make sure that people have healthy careers, but we plan that from their beginning. So there's a lot of work to go into that, all the way to making sure that people are fairly compensated, but we're also competitive. So there's a lot of teams that work on that. And as an HR business partner, so I'm a senior manager of HR, but my function is an HR business partner. We're basically the glue that helps our centers of excellence, which could be payroll, benefits. It could be people in employee relations, the legal team. So basically, we're the glue that makes all those teams work well together.
Great. And what do you enjoy most about your career, and what is something that's challenging?
What I enjoy most about my career is the impact that we have on people. What's most challenging is the impact that we have on people. You're not going to please everyone, but as long as we're doing the right thing, and we kind of all see more things than some other people see. We have a pretty big scope, so that's one thing I do like about it, the impact. But what can be really challenging is making sure that we roll policies up that fits everyone needs, and it's impossible to do so, right? I don't know if you've ever been in relationships, but to get you and your partner on the same page is hard for two people, so imagine an entire company.
And can you describe the type of person that would be a good fit for this career?
Yeah, I think I don't think there's an answer to that. But I think, what we're looking for in human resources or any sort of leadership, because is really diversity in thinking, diversity in thought. I do think that the human resources practice specifically skews to one gender than the other. You will see a lot of woman or woman identified folks who are mostly in HR, but we're looking to sort of get a lot more men and people who identify as men in those roles, especially more representation from the LGBT standpoint, more Black and brown people in the space. So I think it's going to be really important to diversify how we look at HRs. I don't think that people really choose HR as like a thing to do as well. So I think that could be something that could go a long way to get more diversity, not really a specific sort of person. And then one other thing is I saw a question in the chat about being an entrepreneur. So because I am an entrepreneur and I also work in corporate, and that is a question that a lot of people have, and I think it's very doable, very hard, but very doable. And I think a lot of companies are looking for people who are entrepreneurial. Really sell that as one of your strengths as well. But people who are entrepreneurs, I think, maybe I'm biased, they have a different view and scope of the world and how things work. And I think that also helps me in my leadership as well.
Awesome. And then the last question that I have for you before we jump to the audience is, what do you know now that you wish you knew earlier?
Yeah, what I know now that I wish I knew earlier. Hmm. I mean, there's a couple of different things. But what I do recognize now that I did know a lot, and I didn't have that confidence to know that then. So I don't know. It's a weird answer to that, but follow your gut. You know, your gut is what's going to lead you. You could be wrong, but that wrong answer, quote unquote, leads you to a better answer that you probably wouldn't have got if you didn't go in that path. So I think just really give yourself grace. But I think also, you know, you're the age, and once started learning about people's brains and how it develops, it makes so much sense that you're like stressed out about things because you don't see it, you know. And I wouldn't be able to tell you to feel any differently, right? Feel what you're feeling, it's okay. But just know that once you're keep on going, you're on the right path. The worst thing to do is stop, you know, because you're not really going to understand what the answer is, and the answer could be so many different things. So
And for those that have an interest in entrepreneurship, I want to tweak a question just a little bit. So does having experience impact the chances of securing a job in the industry? And if not, then what can people do to kind of build that experience?
So, entrepreneurial experience specifically, or just in general? We're talking.
Entrepreneurial experience specifically, yeah.
Yeah, I think entrepreneurship is interesting, right? Because it's like there's no playbook, there's no specific. Yeah, you learn how, like the same business curriculum that you probably would do in school is what you would need as an entrepreneur, because you have to understand numbers, you have to understand a lot of things. But then entrepreneurship, you have to understand your market, right? And your market could operate in so many different ways. So how I see entrepreneurialism is that pursuit of solving a problem and presenting ideas that would be profitable that also solves that problem, right? And if someone solved it before, they wouldn't need you to solve it. So that's what makes an entrepreneur, you know, very special, because those problem solving skills and how do you get people to buy in to your pitched idea is what you're probably going to be able to use in corporate. And we call it entrepreneurialism, right, where you're building out departments within a company. So I think those are the skills specifically, but I wouldn't say like math, you know, how to write, how to, you know, those are the two specific things, and there's entrepreneurs who are successful that don't know how to do any of those things. So
Thank you for that. So we have another question here. How would you describe the work culture at FanDuel, and what motivated you to work in LA?
yeah, I moved to LA. It was a pandemic move. I was like, I could work from anywhere. So that's what motivated me to live in LA and work in LA. And FanDuel, the culture is like what you would expect from a sports betting technology company, heavily into sports. Not everyone is, so that's fine as well. But people who are fun, is relaxed. I took my hat off for this session, but we literally dress like this. Um, and they work really fast. They're really smart, you know. So I think it's an environment where, you know, if you're not fast, you wouldn't be able to keep up. But you learn a lot, and you solve very interesting problems every single day. At FanDuel, there are a lot of career firsts. Like the first week that I started, there was like this big reduction in force, right, where we had to move a lot of people to another department, you know, and do all these these interesting sort of things, right? And that goes to show you, you know how fast the business moves. But I was asking people like, hey, how have you done this in the past? And they were like, we haven't. So, you know, that entrepreneurial spirit where you're solving problems that may not have been solved before, definitely came in handy for me.
Awesome. And what is something that you're looking for in a person to join your team in entry level positions at
Yeah,
FanDuel?
so Yeah, so like an entry level position for HR would be like a coordinator, you know, it could be or it could be a generalist, but mostly as a coordinator. You would need years of experience to be a HR generalist. And this is from an HRBP standpoint. There's so many different places in HR. There's compensation. I don't know how to do their jobs, right? There's benefits, you know, so it depends on where in HR. But if you're talking about HR business partner, which I love that role specifically because I'm a part of the business and I'm a decision maker versus, you know, like an administrative person. But yeah, a coordinator who has their hands on how to do different things. I would suggest if you don't have experience in HR, you do your SHRM, which is SHRM certification, and learn, you know, about the HR practice. But those are certain roles that I would look at from an entry level perspective.
Perfect. Thank you. And then we have just a little time for a few more questions. So what skills and career advice would you have for, oh wait, sorry, I read the wrong one. That was a mistake. Oh, did I read the right one? Oh, yeah,
That's right.
the right one. So what skills and career advice would you have for a college student interested in a career in HR?
Yeah, I think it's interesting because the question comes up, if you don't have experience, how do I get in? Or you know, so that comes up often, and I asked the same question when I was in school as well. And how I solved for that is I just raised my hand. I took on unpaid internships. I took on paid internships. I volunteered. You know, so really what you want to focus on is like what is the story you're going to tell, but you have to create that story for yourself. And one of my mentors, he was a executive at Goldman Sachs, and I was so blessed to have access to someone like him in my church. And I said, "Hey, I want you to help me with my resume." He ripped the entire thing up and said it sucked, and I was like, "Okay, thank you." Um, and what that did is help me understand. Like he said, "Hey, you don't have the stuff to put in here to make it impressive. No one's gonna be like excited about you, so you have to create that now." So what I did is did an internship at MTV, did an internship at the Federal Reserve Bank, I did an internship at Giorgio Armani. I literally built my career before because I know I didn't go to Ivy League school, and that was like another thing, right? You know, Brooklyn College is a great school, but when you're looking at the grand scope of how people are hiring, they're looking at all of those different things. Less now because of all the drama with you know, Ivy League, but still it's a thing, right? So you want to make sure you're building your brand, and we don't talk about branding a lot, but your resume is your initial brand. So what does that say? If you read it, are you impressed? And if you're not impressed, go add things to it so that people could sort of buy into what you're trying to sell. Another thing I would say, depending on the job that you want, and it could change, right? I didn't expect to be in HR. But I will look at those job descriptions, and a lot of people don't do that. Really read it. Spend time putting those things together so that we can match your skills with what that says. So really read it, break it down, highlight it. What is that company actually asking for? And in seeing how you can fill in those blanks. So it's kind of working ahead, but working backwards in a sense.
So I think we have time for one last question. So I'm gonna ask Jody Ann to ask her question.
Yes, hi. Thank you, Cliff. Hi, Daniel. I just wanted to say thanks again for attending the session and sharing your experience. I'm actually a writer, and I saw a few open roles like copyright and product marketing. So I'd love to, reach out to you about that. But more so, it sounds like you're on the recruiting end of the HR department. So I'd love to know, like, you kind of talked a little bit about, like, enhancing your resume to make sure that it aligns with what's being asked in the job description. But I'd love to know just like how candidates can go one step above in such like a very crowded, environment where there's a lot of very small roles, lots of candidates, lots of layoff, lots of, RIFs. That you mentioned. So I wanted to know if you could just share just a little bit more about that, like how you can stand out.
Yeah, stand out. It changes all the time, right? LinkedIn algorithm changes, right? So I think look at some of those things, but the biggest thing is think about the power of AI and what that does for companies. More and more companies, and this has been a long time, but now it's part of the conversation. But there's AI that kicks your resume right out if it doesn't have the keywords that's in the job description. And that's why I was saying, look at the job description, make sure that your resume mirrors that as much as possible. Obviously, you're not going to lie, but make sure you're using those keywords, because from that, there's a lot that's filtered, because it's impossible for one human being, depending on how big the company or how you know how exciting it is to work there. The application pool is large or small. For FanDuel, our application pool is pretty large. So I would say, one, look at those keywords, making sure that your resume is tailored to that company. And then for Disney, for example, your resume needs to be tailored differently because they're looking for something else. So don't think that like every role is synonymous across the board. It really is bespoke to that company. So that's one thing. I think someone said reach out. You could reach out to me and I could give you the insight more than I would do on this broad call. But I think those two things in terms of standing out works well. But I said those two things, but it's how you write that introductory email, right? It's how you write, the LinkedIn DM. For example, if you're not connected to someone on LinkedIn, you can request their connection, but sometimes there's a space where you can introduce yourself. Literally, if that is not interesting enough, I'm gonna press X, right? Or not respond at all. So it just really depends on how you go about really introducing yourself. And know that like if you reach out and someone doesn't respond is a numbers game. So don't feel bad about it. So you reach out to as many people as possible.
Excellent. So my last question, Daniel, is how can students connect with you? Is LinkedIn best? Is there another means?
Instagram is probably even faster than LinkedIn. But yeah, LinkedIn, you can do that from a professional standpoint. Instagram, Daniel P. Calderon at gmail.com. I'll put it in the chat. But either one of those works well. But if it's like specifically a work question, probably LinkedIn would be the best one to get.
Excellent. Thanks so much. Feel free to hang around, or I know it's super early if you have to hop off, but thanks for giving some insights to our students.
Of course. I have to hop up to another call, but such a pleasure to be here. And please reach out, LinkedIn or my Instagram. You can DM me.
Excellent. Thanks so much for joining us. Before we fully jump in, could you just say your name and your title, the company you work for?
Yes, my name is Elizabeth Tupper. I work for Aon and I'm the Chief Administrative Officer for Greater New York.
Excellent. So what factors inspired you to select your current career?
So I think with my experience, it's kind of important to comment that what's gotten me here is really just the evolution of my experience at large. I graduated from the University of Florida over 20 years ago now, which makes me want to cry a little bit. And I had a degree in English. I went into sales from there. I was in pharmaceutical sales for a little bit, for 3 years. And then I moved over to a law firm in New York working in marketing. Did that for about 6 years. And at that time, it was a smaller company. I tapped out on learning opportunities within that company. And basically, if I wanted to continue to advance my career, I would have needed to go a different direction, such as law school or go into a different division. And I had a friend that worked at Aon at the time, and he always was doing really interesting things, was always being challenged, and it seemed like he was being promoted like every few years. So I had it in my head that it would be wise to look for a Fortune 500 position. I had the experience in marketing, I had experience in sales. So that's what kind of led me to look at particular organizations. I wasn't as concerned about the industry, but because my friend had always said wonderful things about Aon, I obviously looked here, and I landed a position that was in their marketing team. But as I joined Aon and was brought on board, I learned rather quickly that there was a really big need for more analytical work that went alongside sales and marketing. And I became somewhat self-taught. And that's kind of set me up with my career at Aon. So I became a bit of a jack of all trades and good at deciphering data. And through that, I've been able to take on new responsibilities and project manage, um, as things are needed.
Awesome. So what is an example of a project that you frequently work on?
So I work with a team. There's 8 of us, and it's business analysts. We support the region at large. We're focused on a few different things, mainly growth, though. Every organization is really focused on growth. And so our team is focused on new business forecasting. So identifying like what we're pursuing and what's the likelihood of that revenue actually coming in within a certain period of time. We also do a lot of reporting in relation to operations. So if there's a certain initiative that's being rolled out, my team's responsible for understanding how colleagues are adopting to it and how we can help support additional training to get people on board. Back on the growth front, we also are very focused on helping identify where we think we should grow the business and how we can get people the right tools to do that. So it's kind of a mixed bag, but it's a lot of project management, I would say, and reporting.
Awesome. What do you enjoy most about your career, and what is most challenging?
That's a fun question and a hard question at the same time. I would say that there's 2 things that I really enjoy the most. With Aon specifically, it's the people. Our last speaker commented on kindness gets you everywhere. And I think that's very true in insurance at large. It's a relationship-driven industry. And so most people come to work with an attitude that they want to help their clients, they want to solve problems, they want to collaborate. So it's a nice environment. And really intelligent people too. So I feel like I'm always learning. The other thing that I really enjoy about my career here is the variety. So, I have a nebulous title where I can have anything land on my desk. And that means no 2 days are ever the same, which I really like. Like I like to be challenged that way. So on the flip side, the challenges, I'm going to say, are people and variety as well. My team of 8, most of them are within recent grads to 7 years of experience. And, I'm very much tasked with making sure that our high potential talent is continuing to be challenged and sees a good career path for them within the organization. I definitely practice what I preach there because I've had many different iterations of a position at Aon, and I want to make sure that our talent feels like they're continuing to be developed. And with that means I have to be on my game as far as making sure that the next crop of talents coming in can take on positions as we're promoting people through the firm. But definitely a challenge. And then the variety, while I love it, there is a comfort in knowing exactly what you're going to do in a day. And I don't always get that comfort, but yeah.
Great. Can you describe the type of person that would be a good fit for this type of career?
So I think within internal business ops, being outgoing is really important because while we are working with our core team, we're also working with colleagues, across the organization. So we need to be able to develop relationships and generate responses out of people. I would say agile thinkers, creative thinkers, analytical thinkers. It's really helpful when colleagues come to me and they say, this is the problem. These are the 2 ways I'm thinking about approaching it. And then us coming together and coming up with a game plan as opposed to feeling stuck, and I say to my team rather often, I don't want anybody to feel like there's pride of ownership in the work that we do if the way we do it. So if they see a better way to do a project, like by all means speak out. So I want people that are going to bring new perspectives and speak up to the team. And I think if anybody, feels confident in that front, they can add value to wherever they are.
Excellent. And the last question that I have for you before we jump to the questions from our students is, what do you know now that you wish you knew earlier?
Well, it's been a while. So I was thinking about more early on in my career, and some aha moments I had. I think a hard one as a people pleaser is timelines. So like be realistic about what's on your plate and how long it's going to take to be able to, solve for someone's issue. And don't be afraid to give people bad news if it's going to take longer than they'd like. Uh, Level setting is really important in any career. And then asking questions, I think that is so underrated. I know I heard some questions about how to stand out in interviews. I think asking insightful questions really makes candidates stand out because it shows me that they care, that they want to know more, and I'm hopeful that that'll translate into the working world where they won't let themselves get hung up by not knowing the answer, and that they'll raise their hand, ask questions, and maybe do research themselves to continue to better themselves to be able to, embrace new projects.
Great. So let's jump into questions from the chat. Mary, I could start. What were some of your favorite fields of practice that you took in self-learning?
Ooh, that is a good question. So I'm a licensed broker. I also have my AIM, and or sorry, ARM and risk management license. And I think both of those were helpful processes. The license, it gives you a baseline understanding of just the language that's being used within insurance, but the ARM really helps us understand what our clients are going through and how they think. So I would say for anybody that's looking to get into insurance, obviously a license is a must, but the ARM is very valuable because it can make you kind of click into client focused view as opposed to a business focus.
Great, thank you. How did you get into this occupation and what did you do before your current position?
Yeah, so I've been in pharmaceutical sales. I worked in marketing for an intellectual property law firm. And within Aon, I came on as a sales and marketing consultant. So I had about 10 years of experience at that time. And I was really working hand in hand with our sales leaders at that time to discover, where we thought we could grow the firm, and help build out strategy and execution on that. From there, the person that hired me on, he was promoted to lead a team of account managers. And it was a larger team, and our internal reporting was still in early stages, I would say. So I went and moved into a role with him where I became an analyst for the team and helped them understand how they were performing on a monthly basis to both financial metrics and operational metrics. So I created a rather vigorous or robust dashboard, and had very good working relationships with our AEs on what they needed to succeed. After doing that for 4 years, we had a new operations leader for the region who asked if I wanted to take what I was doing for that one team and expand it and help support the region at large. And so now I'm kind of in a position that's similar to that. It's not fall under me now, but it's kind of been an evolution.
Awesome. Okay, so given your experiences in various industries, what skill sets, the hard skills and soft skills, do you typically find to be most valuable to have and to need to learn for the current job market?
So hard skills, I am in Excel day in, day out, hour by hour. So I would say understand the Microsoft suite. If you go into a different industry, there's different programs that they use, but um, you know, insurance very much still lives by Microsoft. So understand it, understand how it can enhance your work and how it can make you more efficient. I will say there's things I did at the beginning of my career that took days that I can now do in minutes, which is great. Probably should have taken one of those Excel courses sooner. So I would definitely say, invest time in yourself in that space. And it also will allow you to understand where your interests lie. If you find you're having a better time working on a PowerPoint presentation and weaving a narrative rather than diving deep into data, then that's going to help you kind of direct where you may be more successful in your career. Soft skills. I'm not the best when it comes to networking. I think that's really important though, particularly when you're starting off your career, because as you develop relationships with other people, you may find that there's positions out there and organizations out there that really pique your interest, and you're going to learn that through networking. So I would say that's where I would spend time.
Thank you. And what classes or projects can a student undertake to prepare themselves for this career area?
Yeah, so if you want to be like internal operations, I would say taking finance courses is really important. Again, any programming courses, like so that you have a better command of VBA, macros, Excel, that's really helpful. If you're talking about insurance, broader insurance, there are risk management courses, and I highly recommend that you take those, because while we will hire people without that, they definitely hit the ground running if they've had that, or they pick things up faster. Getting your license is easier because it's not a foreign language. You'll have some recollection of learning that in school, which will make it easier to transition into the working world.
Nice. So one thing that I always like to ask is, what is one action step that each student should take after today's session that helps them become competitive for the field?
That is a good question. I think the soul searching element's really important. I'm sure everybody's doing that as you're in college, but like continue to look through your network, your parents' friends, people you go to church with, and have conversations with them about their day-to-day. I know when I was in college, I'd often ask my stepfather about his work. He was in business and what he did. And he used to always make this joke that he was just making people happy. I get that now. I feel like that's my job, is to make people happy. It's to answer questions and solve for it. But like asking that next level of conversations of how you make people happy, or like what you're really doing, what's the day-to-day look like, will help you all form an impression of where you want to go.
Excellent. I think also, Liz, this brings up a good point where people think that their network has to be like, I don't know, this person that's in a suit that goes to the city every single day, right? And you only meet them in an office, versus your network, like you kind of mentioned, it's anyone that's a part of your community is a part of your network. And, the other thing that we say all the time that I think you alluded to is, just because, let's say you're now in my network, now you know someone that you could connect me with, right? So it doesn't just stop in that one spot.
Yeah. And I think anybody that knows you on a personal level, if they can help you, and if that means introducing you to somebody else that they know, they will. Like we all know what it's like to be early in your career and trying to figure it out. So don't be afraid to broadcast what you want, and take people up on those offers, because we've all been there. Yeah.
Thank you. So I'm gonna have one last question. How do you maintain an effective work-life balance?
That's funny. No, I'm just kidding. I have 2 kids, so they really help me maintain it, because when I'm home from work, I have to focus on them. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. But I would say broader, like set rules and boundaries for yourself with checking your emails at home. We're connected 24/7. So like I do a thing where I get home, I give myself 3 hours to do family stuff and whatnot. I may check my email again if I know things are pressing. I may be a little more connected if I know things are pressing, but I'll give myself kind of like timelines for when I'm going to check in, so I don't feel like I'm constantly at work, because it's not healthy. But I will say insurance is one of those areas where it can be really demanding at times, when there's like a heavy renewal season, but there generally is a pretty good work-life balance. Like people understand that, we don't work to live, we don't live to work, we work to live. So, and also communicating that, setting expectations with my team members if I'm going to be offline or going to do something. And then last thing is leading by example. So I want my team to take all their vacation time. So I try to take all my vacation time. So just things to put out there as you all enter the workforce, practice what you preach.
I think those are really great nuggets, especially like protecting your time. And I think
Mhm.
that's great when you're able to show it, especially when you're on a higher level. So then others will be able to follow, ideally.
Yeah,
Awesome.
100%.
So my last question for you is, what is the best way for students to connect further? Is it LinkedIn or something else?
I would say LinkedIn. Yeah, and if you want to, connect with me, and then we can email through there. That's definitely the easiest route.
Excellent. And then just a reminder, I know I said this a couple of times to the students, if you're connecting with Liz on LinkedIn, make sure you mention where you met her, because I'm sure she gets tons of requests all the time. That little note does make a difference.
It does, because I don't accept all requests either. I find that it's a great recruiting tool, but sometimes you need to balance yourself. So if you tell me it's through this, I will definitely connect and would love to hear if you have other questions.
Great. Thanks so much. We're going to move on to our next speaker, but feel free to hang around.
Great, thank you.
Awesome. All right. Josh, can you hear and see me and everything else?
Yep, all that's good. How is it
Awesome.
going?
So thanks so much for joining. I have a couple of questions and then we'll take questions from the audience. But before I officially kick off, could you just tell us your title and the organization you work for?
Sure, it's going to be a little longer than anticipated. I formerly was the Senior Director of Operations for North America at a global tech company. I was laid off just before Christmas. And so now I am starting up my own consulting firm. So I guess just with that, like if you're working in corporate America, layoffs are part of the game. And for me, at least at this point, it's not something to really stress, but embrace. The last time I was laid off, I wound up in a better position within a month. And now is the opportunity to go out on my own, which is something I've been planning for some time now.
I do this thing where I say like sorry to hear, but then also sort of congratulations in a sense of now it helps you like get to your next step.
Yep.
So thanks so much for being transparent about that. And let's jump in. So what factors inspired you to select your current career?
Having no idea what I wanted to do when I grow up. Still, that's present. But when I was in college, I decided I'm not really clear what I want to be doing. And so I went for a degree in business management and finance, which I figure whatever I'm going to do, having some business savvy and a little bit of financial knowledge is going to be helpful. And frankly, that's been the case.
Could you talk about an example of a project that you frequently work on?
Sure. So, and I can talk to both sides of where I'm at. So, I've been in operations for over 15 years, business operations. And so a lot of the work is spreadsheets, certainly, as the last speaker said, right? I spend a lot of time in spreadsheets. I do a lot of process, strategy. I've written many SOPs or standard operating procedures. Um, and it's nice because in a business operations role, often you'll have the opportunity to touch all aspects of the business. And so, I didn't work for sales, but I worked with sales quite a bit. And I worked in a consulting firm for a long time. I wasn't actually doing consulting often. Often I was figuring out the back end of the firm. And so I was working with the C-suite. So, the other thing I'll say is if you're in operations, be ready to work on anything and everything. You know, I've worked on I was looking to set up business in Dubai at one point. So it's operations roles you need to be flexible and fluid throughout.
Awesome. And what do you enjoy most about, I guess, your previous career and then maybe the consulting area? And then what is most challenging?
Yeah, so certainly I like that. Honestly, I don't remember the last time I had to put on a suit. If I put on business casual, I'm getting all fancied up. This is often how I'm dressed. I've worked from home well before the pandemic. I like working with different people. I like working on different projects. I like doing problem solving. So all of those are things that I enjoy. Most recently, I've been doing a lot of work with AI. I was rolling out AI to all of North America in this previous company, and now in my consulting business, I'm helping people with business operations, but implementing AI as well. The challenging parts, I would say operations is a weird place, right? If you're the sales guy or gal, you're bringing in revenue, and so it's very clear, if you made the sale or not, you're doing well or you're not. In operations, it's a little bit different because you don't need an operations person necessarily. Is it good for your business? Yes. Would most companies be in a lot of trouble if they didn't have an operations person? Yes. But especially in small businesses, it's a lot of expense, and so a lot of times you'll see the owner or the CEO trying to take on a lot of it. So it's just know that going into operations, there's a little bit of this, companies have the option to have that person or not.
Excellent. Can you describe the type of person that will be a good fit for these multiple careers?
Yeah. So I would say working for someone, you need to be willing to work for someone, right? That's a certain kind of person. And going out on your own is also a certain kind of person. I think a can-do attitude, I think a being willing to take what's coming and roll with it and adapt, right? If you're not adaptable, operations is probably not a good fit. As some of the other speakers said, like managing your time is really important. Um, and I think one thing that's often overlooked is being willing to challenge your superiors, and not in a disrespectful way by any means. But I think a lot of the value I've contributed to the companies I've worked for and will continue to contribute to my clients is someone saying something in a meeting and not being afraid to, as I've said over the years, getting slapped. Right? Like I'll go into a meeting with the C-level team, and everyone will be saying, "Oh, I think we should do this and this and this," and I'm the one who's often willing to raise my hand and say, "I think we should look at a different option," or "Here's why I don't think that might work," and it can be scary, right? It can be scary going against the entire leadership team of a company, especially if it's a large company. But I think that's a lot of where the value comes from, that you're willing to do that.
Excellent. And the last question that I have before we go to the audience questions is, what do you know now that you wish you knew earlier?
I think going for the gold, right? Like if I could do it all over again, I think I would have started a business when I was much younger. And I talked about it and I started a couple things here and there, but if you're the kind of person who doesn't want to be working for somebody else and wants to be working for yourself, now is a great time, right? Like now it might seem really risky and, dangerous, and maybe you'll have some haters and naysayers saying, now is not the time. But you don't need a lot, right? Like anyone on this call can set up a website. It might take a little bit of time, but anyone on this call can set up a website. Everyone on this call has good ideas. And so I think for me, had I been willing to make the jump earlier, I would be in a very different position.
Awesome. So, Mary, you want to start with the first question?
Yes. So the first question is, as someone who has hired before, what qualities make a candidate stand out?
For me, it's a lot of the details. It's a lot of the small things, right? If we have a call at a certain time, I'm usually on the call a few minutes early. Um, if you're beating me to the call, that's a good sign in my mind. Um, 2 jobs ago, my boss, her name was Bernadine. There are 2 R's in Bernadine. I did not pay attention to that, and I sent her a message, and eventually I added that to the onboarding process of the company to just let new people know, like, pay attention, right? Especially the CEO, you want to make sure you're spelling her name right. Being able to say no is also really important, right? I don't want someone on my team who's going to tell me yes, 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 yes to my ideas, right? I want somebody who's going to challenge what I'm saying, but also to the workload, right? Like we were just talking about work-life balance. It's really important that you can set clear expectations of the work you can do if you need help with something. So, you know, those are skills I'm looking for. And obviously some of those will come once you're on the job, but going into it, really being focused, being prepared. Um, and also I want to work with fun people. Like I don't want to just get to work and be typing away. Like I want to have a relationship with the people I'm working with.
Awesome. And then what do you feel will be the biggest challenge associated with starting a consulting firm?
Time. I think time is going to be the biggest thing going right now. I have little kids. I'm married. My wife has had some procedures recently, so it's just balancing everything, taking care of myself, right? Making sure I get to the pool. I have 2 interns from Brooklyn College right now, making sure I'm utilizing them well, making sure they're getting what they want, um, making sure I have time for them, right? Because a lot of times if I'm working with them, I'm not working on, you know, in the business. So, yeah, I'd say those are some things.
Since you mentioned the balance, I wanted to ask, how do you maintain an effective work-life balance considering you work from home and things like that?
So I guess a couple things on that. Working from home can be challenging, no question. When I first started working from home, a couple things happened. One, I visited the fridge way more often than I wanted or needed to. And two, it was just work and life sort of had this weird overlap. Like I'd be like, oh, I'm home and like I'm sitting, let me just throw in the laundry, which isn't necessarily bad, but sometimes I found myself in a home mode more than a work mode. And the opposite is most definitely true. I mean, there are periods where work picked up and I was just working, and I needed to get a little bit more of a hold on that. So setting clear boundaries, setting clear guidelines, having a space is really good. There was a period I took my email off my phone because I'm just like an addict. Like I'd wake up, I'd roll out, or I'd roll over, and you know, before saying good morning to my wife, I was checking my email. The other thing I'll say about balance is I think the aim is to have a balanced life. And sometimes that means going hard. When we were being acquired, right? So the company I worked for previously, we were acquired into this global company. So I worked for a small consulting firm, and it was about 6 months of going through being acquired. And in that period, I was working 7 a.m. to midnight outside of times I was spending with my family. And doing that regularly, really bad idea. Doing that at bursts when it's necessary, I don't think is such a terrible thing, right? Like, as long as you're making sure you have a plan to get back on track, sometimes you're going to have to go hard.
Josh, that makes me think of there's a previous speaker at one point. I've been to so many events and I always think about this now. Balance doesn't necessarily mean short term, right? It's that long term. So it's okay if you kind of fall off that balance, but it's how do you get back on later on or whatever that might be. Or you're going to spend like a 12-hour day today, but maybe later in the week, you're going to spend a couple of hours if that's possible or whatever it might be. So I think that's a great point that you bring up.
Yep.
I think I had a question in the chat. Yes. So what's your perspective on the advent of tools like AI and how college students should adapt to help them in their job search?
Yeah. So, again, in this last role, I was rolling out AI to North America. And so the company had a few different tools, but I was focusing mainly on a tool similar to ChatGPT. and we had linked all of the company data to it. And I think a lot of the team were like, oh my goodness, we have AI. This is great. What do we do with this thing? And so that was a lot of what I was doing. I was showing people what to do with it, how to use it, etc. And so I think AI is fantastic from a business perspective. I think there are a lot of great tools, but when I'm looking at it, I'm thinking probably one of the best benefits is just time savings, right? If I was working with someone who was manually putting together a PowerPoint presentation, and now in 30 seconds I can at least give them an outline, it's huge time savings. And so, I mean, that's what I'm doing with clients now, right? Like the focus is operations, but a lot of operations is about efficiency. And so if they could be using tools like AI to be more efficient, that's a home run.
Excellent. And then my next question, and I always like to ask this, especially when students are with us, because I think it's nice to have an action step next. So I think you probably heard a previous one. So what do you suggest as being the student's next step right after today's call, essentially?
Yeah, I think reaching out to some people is a really good way to go. I think a lot of what actually happens in life is what you're sharing with people, what you're speaking into the world. And this isn't like like a, frivolous sort of thing, but it's just what I've seen, right? I've been talking about setting up a consulting business, and I recently updated my LinkedIn profile to show looking for work, and people just started reaching out to me. Every time I speak to someone, I'm not doing it to get business, but people are like, oh, why don't you talk to this guy? Or, oh, what do you think about this? And all of a sudden we're in a conversation. So I think if you have a business idea, talk it through with some people and see where you're going to go next. And I think if you have a career path and you're not really sure, but you're thinking about it, reach out to people on LinkedIn. If you know them, great. If you don't know them, also great. I've done that a few times in my career with people who I know and people who I don't know, and just said like, hey, I'm thinking about becoming a product manager. Would you be willing to grab a cup of coffee? And you'd really be surprised how often even a stranger would be like, oh, like, yeah, cool. Like, let's get on a call, or let's go for that cup of coffee. Um, I think it's about not being afraid. Like, looking bad is not going to kill you. And frankly, most of the time people are willing to help.
Awesome. And then I guess just to follow up to that, do you find anything to kind of help get that response rate a bit higher, right? Because like you could reach out to people on LinkedIn, but sometimes maybe they won't respond.
Yeah, I mean, if they're a personal contact, the phone is pretty cool. You could send a text, or you could do it real old school and actually dial some numbers. People respond well. If you can get an introduction, right? So this is something I've done also where, I see someone has a second or third connection. I would reach out to them. I would be clear and prepared, right? So the worst thing, like not the worst thing, but something that can be frustrating to someone who's taking the time is if you get on a call and you're like, hey, I'm looking for work and I'm not really sure what I'm looking for. It's really hard to help somebody in that position. So if you want to be a project manager, then great. Say, hey, I'm considering becoming a project manager. I'd love to hear some of your thoughts. Put a time frame on it is really helpful also. Like, I only need like 10, 15 minutes. If you want, I can even send some questions ahead of time, right? Like, it was really helpful to see all the questions that I was going to be addressing here so I can think them through a little. Um, so those are just some thoughts, right? Reaching out in other ways besides LinkedIn, giving a time frame of how much time you need, clearly explaining what you're looking for, knowing what you're looking for. And if you don't know, that's also fine. People are willing to, if someone said, hey, I'm thinking about my career, I'm not really sure where to go, I'm happy to have that conversation. But I don't want to get into a conversation where someone's like, hey, I'm thinking about project management. And then I get on the call and I can tell like they don't even know what project management is.
Awesome. And then one last thing that comes to mind is a lot of times people will say, ask for 10 or 15 minutes, right? Because that's easier than asking for a half hour, 45 minutes. A lot of people have 10 to 15 minutes. So I think that's a great point.
Mhm.
All right. So my last question, so to speak, is what's the best way for folks to connect with you beyond today? Is it LinkedIn?
I would say email.
Awesome.
And you have my email. You can certainly share that.
Yes, I could put your email in the chat. But with that being said, I want to thank you, Josh, so much for taking the time to speak with our students, taking the time to talk a little bit about your experiences.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me.